That's the scariest feeling in the world. The only thing I had was 2 prison bags, 2 white bags, no money, walking into a homeless shelter, not knowing anybody, with no family around.
Welcome to the second episode of Season 2 of the 98% Life After Prison, a show dedicated to the roughly 22,000 people who return to our communities from prison each year. I'm April Barber Scales.
And I'm Judy Van White. In our show, The 98%, April and I are using the voices of formerly incarcerated people and their advocates to reveal the complicated challenges people face returning to the community after prison.
In today's show, we're talking about addiction. A 2017 study showed that of the more than 17,000 inmates screened for substance use disorder in North Carolina prisons, 71% of them needed long-term treatment, and mental health and substance use often go hand in hand. Nationally, it's been shown that 72% of people jailed with mental illness also have a substance use problem.
We interviewed 3 people who were all in recovery after years of addiction. All 3 have been to prison, but as we will discover, each of them had quite a different experience. After 20 years battling addiction to crack cocaine, Bobby Foster has been clean for 16 years. I met him at Alamance Academy, LLC in Burlington, where he counsels people with substance use disorder and mental health issues. Let's listen to Bobby's story.
My name is Bobby Foster. I am an alcohol and drug counselor for Alamance Academy, LLC. I started using drugs when I was at North Carolina A&T State University. I was a diehard athlete. I played basketball, I played football, I ran track. But I wasn't a part of the sports world at A&T, so I just started hanging out with the crowd. And by that time, they was like smoking weed and drinking and, then they started doing hard drugs. And like I said, I tried anything once, but when I tried it, I got hooked. And it tells you that sometimes people can try crack one time and get hooked. And I did. And I smoked crack for 20 years.
What was your life like during those 20 years?
Oh, God. I was in and out of jail, living from pillar to post. I always try to keep a job so I can just fund my high. I slept in the back of the Goodwill truck on South End Eugene Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. I also was homeless in Greensboro from 1998 to 2000 for 2 years. I got out of prison in 1997, and I didn't stop using when I got out, and it just took me right back down to the same place that I was at. In 2000, I guess God sent my best friend by, and he saw me at the store, and he was like, "What are you doing, man?" So he told me, "Get your stuff and come on." And he brought me here to Burlington, North Carolina, and I stayed with him for about 5 months, and I was getting myself together, but, I didn't have any support for my addiction. So my addiction started all over again. So when it started all over again, I used from 2000 all the way to 2007 before I got clean. And during those times, I had sporadic periods of sobriety. I had like 11 months one time. I had 6 months one time. I had 4 months one time, but I will always go back to using because I didn't have any supports. And then I started going to Narcotics Anonymous. And when I started going to Narcotics Anonymous, I went to treatment. And after I left treatment, I just said I was tired, and I had my daughter. And by that time, she was like right at 2 years old. So today she is 18. And she's at NC State University, and she has never seen her father high, drunk, or indifferent. and she thinks I'm the best dad in the world. So I just have to make sure that I do what I need to do to stay clean. Your addiction is always going to be with you, okay? You have to manage it. You can't control it. You have to manage it, okay? And a lot of people think that they can control your addiction, but you cannot. You have to manage it just like you manage high blood pressure.
How did prison affect your addiction?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is it's the same drugs that are on the street are in prison. You know, you have to choose not to indulge in the drugs in prison. Luckily for me, I played basketball while I was in prison, and I played on the basketball team. So I got to travel from prison to prison playing basketball. So I kind of had fun. I mean, because I did what I loved to do when I played basketball. So my prison stay was not that bad, okay? Because I played on the basketball team and we were winning and we were beating the other prisons. And so we got kind of a little bit of special treatment. So my prison life wasn't that bad.
Were you able to get clean in prison?
Yes and no, okay? I went through the DART program while I was in there. I stayed clean while I was in there, but I did drink some alcohol. You know, a guy came in, had some alcohol. We were in green clothes at the time. And he was like, "Bob, you want to drink?" Sure. You know, why not? So I had a drink. But, you know, when I got out, I had been clean probably for over a year without any mood, mind altering substances in my body.
What happened when you got out of prison?
Well, to be honest, my two brothers picked me up and they had every drug you can name with them. So by the time I got home, it was right back to the same old thing, you know. My mother looked at me and she said, "Just don't make no sense," you know. And I was drunk, high, all over again before I even reached my home when I got out. Yeah.
Did addiction run in your family at all?
Well, my father was alcoholic. Okay. I have a brother still in active addiction right now. You know, he still drinks to where he gets drunk. But my other brother, when I got clean, I had 6 years clean. He got clean, and January of next year, he picks up 10 years. So, you know, sometimes we can be the only living example that they see that the program of Narcotics Anonymous or AA or anything like that works, because a lot of people don't think that it works. But when you can go somewhere and you have a judgment-free zone where you can express yourself on how you feel, then it's great, because you can't just go out here to somebody and say, "You know what, man, I feel like getting high today." They won't understand what you mean when you say that, you know. So the thing is, when you're around other people like you and you say, "Man, I feel like I want to get high today," they know how to help you through that situation.
You said your daughter was 2 years old, but what gave you the courage to finally quit? What was that process like?
It was actually August the 16th, 2007, 3 days before I got clean, and it was my birthday. I had went and got my drugs, my alcohol and stuff, and I went by one of my friend's house and I was going, you know, get high, but I had not used yet. I didn't have any mood, mind altering drugs in my system. So when I got there, you know, he said, "Well, after we smoke your dope and drink your alcohol, you got to leave." And it just resonated in me, and something like my life just flashed before my eyes. And I got up from the table and I left everything there and I said, "You'll never see me again." And I have not got high from that day to this one.
So now you counsel people. What do you think is the secret What works?
They have to want it. Like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You know, if I can open up people's head and just pour recovery into it and close it up, that would be great. But it doesn't work like that. To get somebody to stop using, you can plant the seed, okay? But you can't make them stop using, you know. You have to get them in an environment where there's no drugs and alcohol around. Sometimes jail is the best thing, you know, because they go to rehab and it's drugs in rehab. You know, it's drugs everywhere you go. A lot of people don't understand that. When you get them into a jail, I hate to say it like this, it can slow you down, you know. What I have learned is that a lot of times people are addicted to the lifestyle, you know, the lifestyle of hanging out with your friends and you on the corner, you doing this, you know. A lot of sex and drugs and stuff is all mixed in together. And you think you're having fun, but really you're not. You know, you can't go back to your old neighborhoods. You know, when I got clean this time, I would drive 15 minutes out the way so I would not go through my old neighborhood where I got high at. Because I knew if I drove through there and I saw somebody and I stopped, it was over with.
Three years in prison may have slowed Bobby down, but as he admits, it certainly didn't cure him of his disease. And judging from the recidivism rates for people with addiction, locking people up seldom provides any kind of lasting solution for the enormous problem we have in this country with substance use disorder. April, you've never used drugs yourself, but you've had a lot of experience with people who have suffered from addiction, including your mother. What are your thoughts about using incarceration to deal with people with substance use disorder?
Incarceration does not fix the disorder itself. It only solves the problem of the crime committed, usually after suffering from mental health and substance abuse. I remember going to detox a couple of times, getting my mom. Detox long-term would have probably worked for her if she could have broken away from the society that she chose to live in. She was raised by good parents, but she just wanted to see what happened on the fast life. And she never, unfortunately, was able to bounce back from that. I don't think that incarceration is a means of assault. It's not a solution for the problem. They need long-term treatment, and the counseling needs to start as soon as the problem arises.
And treatment has been proven to actually work in a lot of cases. And like Bobby Foster said, your mother was like kind of addicted to the lifestyle, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yep, she was just addicted to the fast life. She just wanted to see how it was, and she liked it. I guess it seemed to be a lot easier than her reality, which ended up not to be as easy as she thought.
That is so sad. In our next interview, we'll hear from a woman who struggled with addiction for many years. The difference between Adriana and Bobby Foster is that after being incarcerated several times, she finally found help from the wife of her attorney while she was sitting in Alamance County Jail. Let's hear how it took someone who cared enough to fight for Adriana to get her the treatment she needed. And just a note, we talked on her front porch, so you can hear the sound of cars rushing by, as well as the occasional noises from her 4-year-old daughter playing in the background. Here's Adriana.
My name is Adriana. We are sitting on my front porch. This is my safe spot. This is my comfort zone. This is where I know I can always come back to as long as I'm doing the right thing. I wasn't the best student socially, but academically, I passed all my classes with flying colors, straight A's and B's, and, I graduated with a 3.6 GPA and thought that I had big plans. Unfortunately, the world had other plans for me. I was pregnant my senior year in high school, walked across the stage, big brown belly. I had plans on going to college, but their dad had other plans, and that was not one of them. So, needless to say, I didn't go. He was very controlling, very possessive, but he was a good guy, and he was a good dad, in the beginning. In the early years, we were together for about 12 years. And then, I had kids back to back to back to back. 3 kids before I was 21. Life just went by so fast. We always took pills and, smoked weed, but, it got to a point years down the road that I started seeing him change. I started seeing his actions and his behaviors changing, and I kind of felt like something was off and something was different. And, that day came where I caught him in the bathroom, sitting in the bathtub, smoking crack out of a can. And that was it, because he was paranoid schizophrenic. So in his mind, if I wasn't doing it with him, then I was going to be the one to tell on him. And so there was a lot of abuse for the next week because I refused. I wanted more out of my life. And my real dad, me and my little brother's real dad, left us for the streets and the drugs. And so I never wanted to be that parent. But inevitably, I was tired. I got tired of fighting. I gave in. And it wasn't even a month later, I lost everything I had worked for my whole life. I lost my kids. I had no home. And I was sitting in Alamance County Jail for the next 3 months. We had both got locked up, and he got out. He got out in a matter of like a couple days. And I sat there for 3 months, almost 4 months. And what that did to me mentally, I'll never be able to explain, but it made me no longer care. Not hearing from nobody at all, I felt like, I was by myself. So I got out, and I went straight to his grandma's in Hillsboro. And, his cousin had told me that he was with some other girl, and he had been with some other girl for a couple months. And I was absolutely heartbroken, because that wasn't just the father of my kids, but that was my best friend and the man that I had been with for the past 10, 11 years. I had no clue how to handle those type of emotions. I had no clue how to fight those type of demons that were starting to rise inside of me. I had no clue they were even demons. I just knew that the hurt that I was hurting, the pain overwhelmed me so much that I no longer had control over my thoughts. And all I could think about was doing whatever it took to take this pain away. And so that's where I found myself on the streets. He did get me hooked on, this crack cocaine before my incarceration, my first incarceration. I knew that that was the relief that I was looking for. At least I remember hearing my demons tell me that. It wasn't until, many, many, many years later, and a whole lot of trauma later, that, I learned different. But at the time, you have no clue that this game of addiction and that these demons you have to fight, you have no clue what they are, how they work, or how to even attempt to escape them until you hit the bottom, until you hit rock bottom. My last prison stint, like Raleigh DOC, was 3 years. I came home in 2016, and I stayed sober for almost 7 years. Let's see, I've probably been, between county and DOC, I've probably been locked up over a dozen times. I was never one to take probation because I knew myself. even at a young age, I knew myself, and I knew that that was just a setup for me. That was something that I couldn't do. It's been over 2 years now. October 23rd actually made my 2-year clean date. I did relapse, and I'm going to tell you, those who say, those who get clean and say, oh, I'll never be a statistic, I'll never relapse. You can't say that, because I never thought I'd relapse either. But I had only ever been clean by getting locked up. So I like I said, I knew me even from a young age, and I knew when I relapsed 2 years ago that the only way that I could get clean was to get myself locked up. And so, I went into Walmart, I stole something little. I did it right in front of them. I knew what I was doing. So, they wrote me a ticket, sent me on my way. I turned right back around, did it again till they locked me up. I was not mentally, physically, emotionally prepared to go back down that road. I was tired, but I had never learned about addiction. I had never learned about demons. I had never learned about the disease itself. I knew that I wanted something different, but I was prepared to go back to prison because I still had not, at that point, I had still not even heard of anything else besides what I had always done. I thought that as long as I don't do drugs, I'll be okay. But that's not the case. So, during my stay, I actually met 3 wonderful people who will always be like my guardian angels. One was a peer support specialist, one was my lawyer, and one was his wife, who went to bat for me like she had loved me my whole life. And this lady didn't even know me, but she saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. And it was because of her that I wanted to do something different. She told me that, this is a disease, and there is a way to control your demons, and why don't you try something different? And so they got me into rehab. Never have I ever went to rehab, because I know me. I couldn't go into detox before because my stomach is my biggest trigger. And once my stomach starts hurting, I'm gone. By any means necessary, I'm getting what I need to make my stomach stop hurting. The DA saw my past and my record and was absolutely adamant on sending me to prison for a long time. And I'm talking 10 years. And because she went so hard for me, after 23 days, they finally were able to. So my lawyer actually had to go above the DA and go one man under the sheriff of Alamance County to get my bond unsecured for me to go to rehab. And it changed my life forever. When I went to rehab, I did the whole program. I did the whole process, the whole program and everything. And I actually learned what triggers were and what they meant and how to fight them. I learned that demons never go away. You just learn to play with them instead of fight them. Every time I got out, it wasn't, oh, well, let's do this for you, or why don't you try doing this? Or it was just not even worried about if I had housing or if I had somewhere to go. Every time I got out, I got let right back out to the streets. Every time. Decide you want to do something different? Wow, how much life has changed in the last 2 years for me with the disease of addiction. I have been through a lot in the last 2 years. I had every reason in the world in the last 2 years to relapse again. But because I learned something different and I paid attention and I put my effort in, I was able to fight my demons. I was able to stay strong. I was able to keep standing on all 10 toes instead of giving in to demons that don't even care. So it's definitely been a blessing for me. I don't think I would have ever got the chance if I hadn't had this lady go to war for somebody she didn't even know. Can you tell her thank you for coming out today?
Thank you for coming out.
It's nice to meet you, Ava.
Say yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
She's a busybody.
You know, I can identify with Adriana's story, just not just with my mother's addiction, but the current job that I have with peer support. I work with a lot of people that are in recovery from substance use and mental health issues, as well as reentering into society from incarceration. And it does take just that one person that believes in you that can make a difference and change your life. And I'm glad that Adriana found that person.
Yeah, I mean, she really does provide hope, and she does really prove the case that you can never give up on anyone. And that's when you send them to prison, in a way, you're just locking them away and giving up on them.
Yeah, incarceration is not the solution. They need more mental health and substance use treatments, and they need more counselors that are trained with those specifics to deal with people like that. Incarceration it only justifies, like I said, the crime that they committed when they were in their addiction, not the solution of what made them commit the crime to begin with.
Yeah, amen. But as Bobby Foster noted, jail can slow some people down and allow them to get clean. For Jeffrady in Stafford, incarceration was enough of a shock that it changed his life. Jeffrady not only has stayed clean since he got out of prison in 2017, he's been working for the same trucking company for the past 5 years and volunteering to help others rebuild their lives after prison. Let's hear Jeffrady's story. We've been talking about your addiction. Tell me how it started and how you first got into substance abuse.
After I graduated from high school, which was in 1998, and, you know, the friends that I hang around, they dabbled with smoking marijuana and drinking just on, you know, occasionally on the weekends and stuff like that. And it carried on into my 20s. It just became to be a normal thing. You know, I had great jobs. I worked, and I thought it was normal because, you know, I even went to church. I was a functioning addict. I guess that's what you can call it. But it's when, you know, I got into my late 20s, when I got introduced to opiates, which was pain pills, is where the addiction started getting, people started noticing things because of, you know, addicts, they start to, you know, change when things get, you know, later on into it. And so that's what happened to me. When I started doing opiates, the addiction kept getting more than what I could afford. So, you know, I couldn't, you know, I'm a responsible person, so I have to pay bills and stuff. So.
And where did it end up?
When I went to jail. If it didn't end in jail, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you right now. So, because I didn't care to live. I did not care to live. I mean, I cared to live, but I didn't care whether, I didn't really respect what I was doing to myself. I have a 17-year-old son. I took care of him, but still, I had to know that I had an addiction. You know what I mean? Like it didn't change what the relationship I had with my son when I was in my addiction. It didn't change that, but I still had to make sure that I had, you know, it was take my medicine too, you know. So I couldn't wake up without taking, you know, it was like my medicine. and it controlled me. It did. Like I couldn't get through the day with, without taking a medicine. It was bad. I reflect on it even to this day on how far God has brought me from where I was, because I have a lot of people that I was getting intoxicated with that are no longer here. They died. They didn't want to get no help. They are not here anymore on this earth. And I reflect on that. And that's why I just seeing that and seeing my son that's the reason why I am the way I am today, is because I have a lot to live for. I just started living my life actually when I was freed from Orange Correctional in 2017. It changed my whole outlook on life. And I hate that I had to go through those valleys, but it's either go through it or not be here. And I choose to be here. Yes.
So it sounds like landing in prison was your bottom. Can you talk about that?
Landing in prison was my bottom because everything was stripped from me. My freedom, especially when the drugs was out of my system. That's when I knew that I was at my rock bottom, and I had to make a change in myself if I wanted to be around here to see my son get older. So that was my jail. My rock bottom was prison. Yes.
So what happened in prison? You can get drugs in prison. What happened in prison that changed your life?
I tell you, when somebody's telling you when to go to sleep and when somebody's controlling your life, especially for me, and not being used to that, that did something to me. When your freedom I took my freedom away from me. So, the whole jail experience, I had to experience that to get back to the man I am today. The man who I was born and raised to be, was to go through that. And I knew that going through that, I don't want to go through this again. Even if it wasn't but 2 years, that was a lifetime to me. It was.
You got out in 2017. A lot of people, there are people who go to prison because of their addiction. They get clean and they think they're in control of their addiction, but then they go back. But you didn't. Can you talk about, getting out and what kept you clean?
Well, what kept me clean was, making the decision to not do the same thing that I did to get me in jail. And that was, change everything in my life. The atmosphere. I lost family members from me changing my ways because I don't do the same things that they do, which is okay. But, it's what had to happen if I want to save my life. So I had to change a whole new outlook on my life. I have a son to live for. I have a life to live for. So, that's enough to change for,
Tell me a little more about your son.
My son is Gabriel Stafford. He's a great kid. Yeah, he's a great child. He really is. And I have the conversations with him that wasn't had to me as far as, being a father, so life and death is in the power of the tongue. So if you say things, talk to kids, they're listening. I didn't have that. So I have the conversations with him, to hope and pray that he doesn't go through these avenues that I went through, so, he's a great child. He plays basketball. He's 17 years old. He's a junior this year. I can't believe that, but, he's a well-mannered kid. He really is. He really is. I love him to death.
Is there anything else that you think that you'd like to tell people about your experience or people who may be struggling with addiction now?
You got to talk, that's the main thing. Like, people are scared. I'm speaking for myself. Like, people don't trust people. So, they just is not going to go up and talk to anybody. And I encourage people that if you're feeling down, talk to somebody, because the help is out there. Help is out there. And I wish that I would have been strong enough to talk, but I wasn't. So it led me going to jail. You know, people have to communicate, you know. People have to communicate. They really do.
You know, the way that Jafredian tells it, prison saved his life. He was able to get sober and stay clean. He also made good friends while he was incarcerated. He hung out with guys who were working to turn their lives around and who, once they got out, are now living productive lives. So he's doing really well.
Yeah, I can identify with that. There are some people that I've done time with that I've reconnected with, and we're all on the right path to doing what we need to do to help others. But thanks for joining us today for our show, and join us next time when we talk with a former prison warden to learn about a different time in history of North Carolina corrections. Stay tuned.